Welcome to Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree, where we talk about gospel insights through great stories and help you find entertainment that is both true and beautiful. Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree is part of the Public Square Media network of podcasts that seek to bring an LDS perspective into the public square. I'm Liz Busby, here with my co-host Carl Cranny. This short, we're covering the best Christmas pageant ever, the 2024 Christmas movie from Dallas Jenkins, the director of The Chosen. I just watched this movie last night with my extended family in the theater room for Christmas. Carl, what'd you think of this movie?
We went and saw it on Thanksgiving after we had the big meal. Parents paid for everybody to go watch it, and it was just a delightful way to start off the Christmas season for us, because I am one of those people who does not start the Christmas season until after the Thanksgiving dishes have been completed, put away, and washed, and all that good stuff.
I didn't remember a ton about it. I did read the book in second grade. We read it in school in second grade, which may be only in Utah. But I didn't remember a ton about it except for the summary, bad kids ruin the Christmas play. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well done. It has the potential to be a cheesy story, but they managed that well enough that it's enjoyable and not just overwrought.
Well, yes. Every once in a while, I am in the mood for just a B movie, right? I'm just going to go watch something that doesn't engage my brain very much. And I remember one time I went and watched Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters on Netflix. And I was like, I'm just in the mood to watch this movie. And you know what? It scratched the itch I needed at that particular time. And I still gave it 2 stars. This is not quite like that. But if you're in the mood for something that's just kitschy and Christmassy and fun, but not super serious, with some good morals and a little higher quality than the Hallmark Channel, you're getting exactly what you want, right? And that's exactly what this movie is. But that's what I wanted to start the Christmas season off for me this year. And so it was perfect.
Yeah, and it was nice that it maintains the attention of the whole family. Even my 8-year-old was really enjoying it. I think anyone under 5 might be a little tough to catch, but the kids were enjoying it, the teenagers were enjoying it, the adults were enjoying it, and that's a lot to ask from a Christmas movie. So I enjoyed that. The one thing that threw me out for 30 seconds was that this movie shares some of the actors from The Chosen, and so the pastor is Gaius from The Chosen, and I was like, what is this Roman doing as a church pastor? So for about 30 seconds, we had a conversation about, wait, who is that? Why is he here?
That's funny, yeah. And I think it's a credit to the actors when you can't get past that one role that they had. No, I will always see you as such and such. For me, the thing that I enjoyed the most about it was that final scene. And you're right that this movie captures the attention of everybody about 8 years and older, maybe. My 6-year-old had a little bit of trouble with it. But the scene at the end, when the Herdmans show up and finally complete their coup d'etat and take over the Christmas pageant and show up, and Imogene is there playing Mary, the theater I was in was absolutely silent. Everybody in that theater was having a moment, and I cannot give a movie a higher praise than just to note you were going for something, and at least in that theater in Orem on Thanksgiving 2024, you totally achieved your objective. Everybody was there for that moment and to get the message of the movie. And I cried. Susan cried. We both walked out of the theater like, oh, Susan just, at one point in the theater, Susan just handed me a tissue because she just knew that's what I was needing at that moment. It totally worked for me.
Yeah, it does a really good job of making the same old reading of the Christmas story from Luke 2 feel different and like you really appreciate it, which is what's happening in the movie, and it's what happens to you as you watch the movie, which is something that's tough to do. I was co-editor of a holiday Mormon literature contest. So we just announced the winners today, but writing something new about holidays is tough, because it feels like everything's been done before. Oh, every year we read Luke 2, we sing the same songs. It can start to feel trite, which is what the main narrator, Becky, expresses, right? It feels exactly the same. We're all tired of it, but we can't change it because tradition. And this movie does a great job of making you really appreciate it, even though it doesn't change that much.
I think that's true. That's a good point, that it is easy, of all the things we can do in Christianity, the repetition is the thing that is easiest to fall into, just as roteness, as just doing the thing. This is what we do every Christmas or Easter or on Sunday.
Pioneer Day.
Pioneer Day, right? Yeah, insert part of the liturgical calendar here, or the very fact of the liturgical calendar, which we, of course, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, don't really have, kind of now with Come Follow Me, which is why I'm in favor of Come Follow Me in a lot of ways. But to the Catholics have this phrase, every generation has to represent the gospel to itself. Not just continue on what has been done before, but present it in a new way for them. And that can be tough. And although this movie just is very paint by the numbers, it had such heart to it that I still think it brought something new, at least to my Christmas experience. And I think the thesis and the point of the book, of course, is that we can get stuck in these ways of doing this. It has to be perfect. We have the one lady who's always directing it and has been since time immemorial. And now she's sick and injured and in the hospital, and so she can't do it. And this whole new presentation arises out of these circumstances that helps everybody remember what it's actually. I particularly liked Imogen's monologue. She's the oldest of the Herdman girls, the one who ends up playing Mary, who is coming to church now and doing all these things just to be disruptive, but is letting it affect her in some interesting ways that are both positive and then very negative, where she looks at the picture of Mary and says, if that's your representation of some kind of saint or holy woman, that's never going to be me. I don't look like that. So she can't see herself in these stories. And that conversation she has with the narrator, the main character, Becky, was really heartbreaking for me. And it just reminds me of the different paintings people do of the Savior. And sometimes he looks very African-American. And we have in our Latter-day Saint tradition, the sort of slightly more European Swedish version, even in the Christus statue that we use as the church logo. But her ability to start with that barrier to seeing herself as part of this Christian writ large story, but then being able to do that and feel herself as part of it and participate wholeheartedly by the end of the movie is a marvelous little character arc for this young girl who is otherwise quite a bit of a troublemaker.
Yeah. And I love the way they just really humanized her. Again, I didn't remember a lot from the book, but the fact that they get started on this whole journey towards taking over the Christmas pageant because she loves the movies and the idea that she could be someone different than the lot that life has given her, right? That she's basically the mother to her siblings, that her mom is gone all the time, and that she could choose to be someone else for a little while. And beyond just like the physical appearance of Mary and the church lady's remark on that, right? Oh, you don't look like any Mary I've ever seen. They're very rude about it. But beyond physical appearance, she also wants to be Mary because she wants to have this internal experience of being Mary, of being someone who is holy and sweet. And I think about that with the struggle that a lot of people have with ideals in the church, right? That Imogen sees this ideal woman and she's, I want to have a chance to be that person, if only for the 5 minutes of the Christmas pageant. And the gap that she feels between that and herself and how it makes her feel insecure. But in the end, her chance to embody that ideal changes her, I think, as a person and helps her grow in the end, that like maybe these kids are going to be taken in by the community and turned around, their life changed by this experience. And so I thought the movie was an interesting meditation on the importance of ideals and how they are problematic, but how they're also something we strive for, something that's necessary, right? The church youth program is always emphasizing this strive to be thing, like that you aren't the ideal, but the fact that you get to strive does something for you.
Even the Temple Recommend questions, some of them now say, do you strive to do X or Y or Z or whatever? And I'm here for that sort of vocabulary shift. You make a good point about the peril and the promise of ideals, because we never want to give up on them. We never want to not preach the ideal discipleship, the ideal family life, the ideal ward culture, the ideal whatever it is, right? We never want to stop doing that, but we have to recognize that they are ideals and therefore nobody ever lives up to them. But like Imogen in the movie, we can touch them on occasion. And those moments of touching the ideal or achieving it, even if just for a moment, right? I feel like the quote attributed to J. Golden Kimball, I don't walk the straight and narrow path, but I try to cross it as often as I can. I love it. Even those moments of touching the ideal can change us, and hopefully we get better, right? Christ does say in the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon at the Temple, be therefore perfect. And I'm sure most of our listeners have heard at some point that the word in the original Greek means completed, like the end result of process. Like a statue, the statue is completed. That's what he means, the word that is translated as perfect. To recognize ourselves as works in progress and to hold to those ideals while not being too hard on ourselves for not achieving them is a balance we will all have to strike. And I think this movie did a good job of showing both the peril and the promise. That was something that removed me a little bit from the movie, was at the end when they said, oh, and here's what happened to all of these people after the Christmas pageant. I'm like, I don't know if I needed that, because these are fictional people. We don't need to know that the fictional person grew up. That seemed out of place to me, but I don't know. What did you think of that the after action report of the Herdman family?
I mean, it was kind of fun in that, like, it shows that Imogen broke out of, like, you know, the cycle of her family. Like, she decides she's going to be there for her kids. And I did like that one of the Herdmans does end up going to jail. Like, right. The idea that, like, sometimes you try as hard as you can and people still end up doing things and you can't change that.
Because these kids are actually dangerous.
That was the part that I struggled with.
The whole scene where they think they burned down the whole church or set the church on fire. It was the Herdmans. And then it ends up being somebody's applesauce cake. And it's making the point that everybody is automatically prejudging the Herdmans. Of course, it would be their fault. But at the same time, I would not have in any way put that past the Herdmans based on what we've seen in the movie.
Right. They're genuinely a menace, right? They're stealing kids' lunches, like the main character's brother. His dessert is being stolen for months on end by this kid, and he just has to put up with it because nobody does anything about it. Her necklace gets stolen. They're actually a danger to people. And so I felt like the movie leaned a little bit hard on its portrayal of the church ladies as unaccepting and perfectionist and not getting the spirit of Christianity and how to be a Christ-like person. Because actually, these kids are dangerous. I would be worried about having them around.
Yeah. And again, that's a balance, because you don't want to exclude people from the church, but sometimes you want to exclude people from church. I don't know.
Right. And it presents it as this black and white, either like you include them 100% or you exclude them 100% and you're a bad person.
Either they never attend church or she gets to be Mary of the Plague. There's nothing in between.
Maybe there's some gray area for supervision and paying attention and being cautious as we also serve and reach out to people and not putting kids in dangerous situations because we want to include everyone.
Good point. Part of the women being all cliquey felt very high school to me in some ways with the moms. That's part of the charm of the movie, though, is when you're doing a movie like this, there's got to be a group of church ladies who are a little judgy and gossipy. That's just part of I've used the Hallmark movies already as an example, but there's a formula to these things. And we like it because there's a formula of the high-powered attorney who goes back home to her town because she's got some piece of property she owns and she meets her high school sweetheart. And there's a guy there who may or may not actually be Santa Claus. Whatever, right? And you could just mix and match that to your heart's content and people watch it and they just eat it up. I would almost, if they had somehow done something more nuanced with the mean moms in the church, I would have felt actually a little disappointed. You can't nuance that. That's part of the charm, is that we all know these people and we recognize, I hope, that they are exaggerations, even as we think, oh, that sounds like Sister So-and-so from my old ward or whatever. But recognize that's just part of the cliche, and that's part of the formula. And the formula works as long as at the end of the movie, the gossipy Christian church ladies have their come to Jesus moment. And they did in this movie. So I don't know. It works for me. Paint by the numbers, but you can paint by the numbers and produce something quite beautiful. And I think that's what this movie did.
Yeah, I thought they did have a good redemption at the end. If we compare it to high school clique movies, the popular girls usually end up not apologizing or saying thank you. They end up humiliated. And they resisted the urge to do that with these church ladies, right?
Right.
They smile back at the mom and say, yeah, actually, you were right. You did a good job. The previous director comes and shakes her hand. So there's an admitting that they're wrong, a humility that you don't see in the high school clique stereotype, which was nice. I just worry that it is a stereotype that we portray church ladies as judgmental and gossipy and perfectionistic. And sometimes when we see those stereotypes too much, we project them into our reality and we take small amounts of behavior from real people and interpret it as, oh, you are this stereotype. I know that I did that with high school cliques. I'd watched so much media, read so much media about it that when I went to high school, that was how I interpreted people. And it took me a long time to unlearn that. So I'm a little bit concerned about it, but you're right. It is part of the formula.
That's really interesting because I had the opposite experience in high school. I knew this was going to get so autobiographical, but I was a nerd in high school. I was not one of the in people. I was on the swim team and that's about as cool as I got. But I was friends with enough people. Maybe that was just Orem High in the late 90s. I don't know. I was able to recognize that these cliques existed to various extents, but the people in them were fully, in my mind, three-dimensional formed people because I knew them because they also did this other thing. And whenever I watched a high school clique movie, I recognized it as an over-exaggerated stereotype and didn't necessarily apply it to people in my life. So it's interesting that you had the opposite experience. I wonder if that colors the way we view the use of cliches and stereotypes in storytelling, because I'm happy to see variations on the hero's journey over and over again and recognize that it is just these are the arcs that we use to tell stories and not read super too much.
Fair enough. Should we do some lightning round ratings of the movie?
Sure.
Content-wise,
Celestial.
I would say it's a celestial movie. There's smoking by kids and some of those kind of things, but it's always portrayed as this is a bad thing. And these kids are doing this because they don't realize it's wrong. So it's very clear about right and wrong.
Some of the things I thought actually interesting on this point, and even the girls smoke, and some of the things that like in the 1950s was really scandalous, did not land as scandalously to me in the year of our Lord 2024. So that's an interesting commentary on the times in which we live. But yeah, Celestial, 100%.
Oh, yeah. It was super fun to tell my kids, look, a phone with a cord in the wall. See how they're all tangled up in the phone cord? That was a thing.
Yes.
Oh, yes, indeed. Artistic merit. I would put this at, it's not going to be Muppet Christmas Carol level of I watch this every year religiously Christmas movie, but I would put it at a 4. I would rewatch this. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm going to give it 5 just because, again, when I was in the mood for Hansel and Gretel, it did exactly what I expected of it, and this did exactly what I expected of it, and in that sense, I give it 5 stars. No more, no less. Maybe not a great work of art in the capital G, capital W sense, but it hits all the right notes, and
yes.
if you're going to make a really good B movie, make a really good B movie. And it turns into an A movie accidentally, and I think that's what happened here, so I'm going to give it 5.
Yeah, fair. I feel like we haven't had enough very sincere Christmas movies lately. The last Christmas movie I felt this way about was Spirited, which is very sarcastic and ironic. This is this generation's Miracle on 34th Street kind of movie, where it is a little cheesy, but it's what you want.
As an example, real quick, Muppet Christmas Carol, I think, was just random lightning in a bottle. I don't know that they were going for something as good as that was, and it just evidently was created. And so I don't know that's comparable because sometimes the muse just speaks to you and it works really well. And sometimes she speaks to you and it just works really well. And this is the latter one. So I wouldn't compare it to Muppet Christmas Carol because I don't know what happened to them, but that is an amazing movie. And this one is not.
Yes, see our episode on Christmas Carol adaptations.
That's right. Yeah, you can go listen to that. Well, you asked a question in that episode. What is your favorite film version of The Christmas Carol, and why is it The Muppet Christmas Carol? And everybody laughed because it's true.
It is. It is. And for gospel connections, I think there's no discussion. This is a 5 Apricots movie, really thinking about what does the gospel mean? What does it mean to be a church? How do we include people? How do we interpret scripture and make it new in our lives and make it effective? 100%.
Yeah, that was the original point, I think, of the book. And this film adaptation just carries that forward perfectly. Good discussions to be had. And that you could have with kids, the 6, 7, 8-year-olds understand the message here in a way that is very accessible and also applies to adults, as we've been recording for 25 minutes and still got lots to say.
Especially for kids. I was thinking about my 8-year-old as we were watching this movie because she has a lot of anxiety, and seeing that girl who's around her same age being afraid, praying about it, confronting her fears, and deciding to be a better person and to reach out to this person who's bullied her. That was awesome. And it's at a level she can really understand and get behind.
Definitely morally edifying messages.
All right. The Best Christmas Pageant Ever is out on streaming. So if you've got some time to kill with your extended family this break, check that movie out. Put it on the streaming. Have tissues nearby. Absolutely.
To all of that, the recommendation and the tissue recommendation.
Tissues necessary. This has been Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree, encouraging you to seek after everything virtuous, lovely, of good report, or praiseworthy. We'll see you next time.